Hello, I'd like to welcome everyone to another episode of Heart to Heart with Bree. Tonight, I am so happy to have Coach Andrew Edwards and the Emperor. Would you please introduce yourselves to the viewers?
Yeah, so
Well,
Andrew Edwards here, former national under 17 head coach, founder and technical director at Genesis Football Academy.
and the emperor here, like I like to say, when I was born, they didn't know who I was, so they called me Richard Core. I am founder and former head coach at Argyle Soccer Academy in New Jersey, and I am a USSF B licensed coach and football fanatic.
Well, I'm very excited about this conversation. I'd like you both to do a quick recap of the quarterfinals in your own words.
Go ahead, Richie.
Okay, yeah. So quarterfinal for me was very excited. It's is where you see the meat of the metal now. Like it's almost like the start of the World Cup. You know, not too much in terms of unexpected results. I did expect. Well, I was open and hopeful that maybe Morocco could pull off an unexpected result there. And even though I've been, saying France will win the World Cup from the beginning till this point, but as an African country, you would really hope that they would have, flown the flag a little bit longer. But that hope dissipated because France are really the stronger team, and we saw that throughout the World Cup so far. Spain Belgium was the closest game. We did expect that to be the closest game.
Yes.
But again, Spain are a stronger team than Belgium. They have more depth than Belgium, and that they prevail over Belgium didn't come as a surprise. Norway, England was another wow. What a game. What a game. And I have a newfound respect for Norway after that game. I was peeved, seeing my Brazilian team lose to Norway. And I was peeved because I felt that Brazil didn't impose themselves upon Norway. They played a game that is anti-Brazilian football and ended up losing to Norway. Norway have Erling Haaland, and anybody with Erling Haaland, have an advantage over everybody and anybody. He's such a powerful, Virgin who know to score goal. But I felt that even though the statistics say Norway had more of the ball than England, I felt like England did what was needed to win the game. The coach had the right substitutions at the right time. Declan Rice, we all love him to death. We are three Gooners here, and that's our player. But he was clearly not imposing himself on the game the way he normally does. And to take him out and bring Eberechi Eze on, leaving himself with one, quote unquote, holding midfielder against Martin Odegaard and Erling Haaland. That is saying something about his belief and his ability in belief in his abilities of his players and of how he want to impose himself on the game. And we saw that pay the dividends, Argentina, Switzerland, again, that was another game where if the red card wasn't shown in that game, who knows what we might have seen. The red card definitely hurt Switzerland real bad because it was a closely contested game up until that point. I think it's the team that I saw this far. It's hard to say shackled Messi, but he didn't have the type of impact that he had on the previous games. He got an assist, yes, from the corner kick. But for me, he was more imposing on all the other games, causing more chaos in the defense, if not scoring goals, including penalties, but causing more chaos. I mean, I felt Switzerland managed him much better than all the other teams I've seen so far.
Yes, Coach Andrew.
Yeah, so Emperor analysis is really deep and nice,
Yeah.
But let me just start where you left off with the Switzerland game. I'm in concert with you that Switzerland definitely managed Messi better than all the other teams that he has come up against. I think he had very little influence outside of the corner kicks, the corner kick and other dead ball situations. There was one moment when he dribbled and was, led into a cul-de-sac and wasn't able to really do anything from there. again, as you say, if the red card wasn't given, what could how could the game have played out differently? However, I think if you're looking at those talent and history, as Argentina has to be the deserved winners. And having said that, if you have been paying attention to the FIFA rankings, the 4 teams that have qualified for the semifinals actually are the top 4 FIFA ranked teams coming into the World Cup. And literally, just like in most competitions, you will have 1 going up against 4 and 2 going up against 3 in the semifinals, where Argentina, number 1 rank, will play number 4 ranked England, and number 2 ranked France will play number 3 ranked Spain. So one could say that the results have literally played out to form. However, when you look at the other games, so England played against Norway, and I had expected England to win much more comfortably than they did. But clearly, the illness to Declan Rice and his inability to influence the game the way he normally does would have affected them. But I have to lift my hat to Coach Thomas Tuchel, because he has proven himself to me so far to be the most adaptable coach in the World Cup. You know, the substitutions that he continues to make from game to game. And if you just focus on that one singular game against England, the number of times that he changed the game, changed the setup of the team, you know, moving from a 4-2-1-3 to a 4-1-2-3 or, you know, 4-3-3, and then moving players around from, you know, Reece James coming on to play as a second pivot beside Elliot Anderson, to dropping out to going back to right back, and just a number of different changes that he made throughout the game and throughout the World Cup for that matter. I am very impressed with his man management and the way that he has had this England team really, really, quote unquote, eating from the palm of his hands. You know, going back to the previous 2 quarterfinals, I did expect the results that were there for Spain and also for France. I think Belgium gave Spain a little bit more trouble than I actually expected. I thought Spain would have been a little bit more dominant. That is the team that I think is the one to watch among the 4, though. You know, they are the one that concedes the least amount of goals. They give up the least amount of chances, and that alone in and of itself puts them in a very strong position. I expect them to take France all the way, and quite possibly I think they will get the better of France in that semifinals. France did what they had to do against Morocco, and there's no surprise in that any at all. They are the farm team. They are the team that is really bamboozling and bulldozing everybody in the tournament so far. You know, I think if I could use a phrase from the Champions League finals where everybody was saying unstoppable force coming up against an immovable object, I think that's what we're going to see in that particular semifinals. You know, but so far I think the World Cup has played true to form, in spite of the numerous controversies surrounding the Argentina team.
Your top 2 of the quarterfinals.
For me, I would say the top 2 from the quarterfinals. In terms, I assume you're asking about performance and
yes,
the way the game played out. I think I would have to go for Spain versus Belgium as number 1 for sure. I think that was probably the game that was really good. But in terms of excitement, I think Argentina, Switzerland would come in next in that order for me.
But before I answer that, Bree, you know, I want to take the opportunity, if I might, to just again, you know, say thanks, you know, for having us on this platform. You know, as you know, we spoke last time you and I were on how honored I always am to share the stage with my bigger brother. I mean, in the introduction, I missed the opportunity to let people know that ugly boy and me really related, you know, and it's always an honor for me to share the stage with him. You know, I'm actually wearing his academy jersey. This is from Genesis Football Academy in Manchester, Mandeville, Jamaica. Right, that's the academy that he spoke about in his introduction. In addition to that, Bree, I also want to take the opportunity, you know, for just a pause and reflect on the fact that, you know, while we're still here talking about this beautiful World Cup and the game that we love so much, that the game has lost a very young soul, you know, in the 25-year-old Jaden Adams from South Africa, who participated in the World Cup. And while there's not been any confirmation of the cause of death, there are speculations that he might have ended his own life.
That's
you know,
what I heard.
And at age 25, you know, at any age, you know, it's sad to lose someone who feel like this world is no longer a place for them to be in. So I just wanted to take the moment to pause and reflect and, you know, give grace and thanks for, you know, the 25 years of Jaden Adams and what he has brought to us, including the joy he brought to us during these same World Cup that we're here to talk about. And condolences to his family and the entire South African football fraternity and South Africans the world over.
Thank you for mentioning that. I read about that yesterday, and I do, you know, I don't know how I forgot to even mention that, but thank you so much for bringing that up, because that was heartbreaking to read about that. It really was. So your top two.
Yeah, I am going different to Andrew on this one, because for me, I enjoyed the France Morocco game. You know, I was, you know, I enjoyed all the games, right? And the games to me, they played true to form, right? You know, in terms of at least the results. The Norway England game, you know, for all the reasons that we've talked about, and Andrew just mentioned about Thomas Tuchel's flexibility, and not just flexibility, but his ability as a coach, right? We sit here, we talk about Brazil, and how Brazil just don't even look like themselves with a foreign coach who's trying to impose a different style of play on, you know, Brazil. But Thomas Tuchel comes in and just embraces the whole culture, the whole way of playing football, said this is the Premier League, and Premier League is the best league in the world, and we are going to play like the Premier League. You know, so he embraced that from day one, you know, and he's very outspoken in the reasons behind his decisions, and they all make sense. You know, whether you are a coach or a player or a deep analytical observer of the game, you can just listen to the things that he say and see that it does make sense. You know, so for me, I France and Morocco and England Norway are the two games that, you know, I will go with as the two favorite for the
Okay,
nothing wrong with that. It's a good move. Yeah, but Bree, just beg you a quick 30 seconds, because yeah, Richie, thank you for doing that regarding Jaden Adams. I know you are the empath among us, and it is not surprising that you would have made that acknowledgement. So we want to also just quickly say we give thanks for his contribution to life itself and to football in particular. Yeah. Serious thing, you know, when people get to a stage where them feel overwhelmed, and, you know, it's touching, but in the same breath, we have to accept that everybody has a purpose in this life, and once that purpose is fulfilled, people move along, you know.
Yeah, and you know, I'd like to take the opportunity to say, you know, to the viewers, if there's anyone out there who is feeling that there, you know, there's no hope, please reach out to someone, because you know what? I know when people get to that point, they feel that no one cares or there's no hope, but there's always hope. And, you know, I would just like to say, please reach out to someone, because it's who you leave behind who will suffer for the rest of their lives, you know, thinking, what could I have done? Why didn't I notice the signs? I'm sure his teammates are probably questioning themselves now. So, you know, once again, Richie, thank you so much for mentioning that. Which team and which player stood out to you guys the most?
You know, for me, I am going to go with, surprisingly, a team that didn't even win in the quarterfinal. And I'll say why. And I'm going to go with Morocco. and Ashraf Hakimi, and I'll say why. One, obviously because, well, not obviously, but because they're an African team, and I do not hide my affinity to the teams from the motherland, the continent of the motherland. But when you look at Morocco from the first game to their 2-0 loss to France, what you get is consistency and competitiveness all across the board. Even when they lost their top striker, a game and a half in, you wouldn't have noticed that. And why I say Ashraf Hakimi is because I saw stats a couple of days ago that says even now, with Morocco being out of the tournament, he's joint top chance creator. And he's playing at right back. He's playing as a defender, right? But from the first game against Brazil, he had Brazil revamp their whole approach to the game. Brazil play with just a right back on their right side and kind of shifted everybody left and left of center to try to slow Ashraf Hakimi's progress on that left side. Scotland play with 2 left backs. Scotland play with Kieran Tierney and Andy Robertson to try and slow Ashraf Hakimi, right? And he's still producing numbers that he's producing consistently right throughout, So yes, we have the superstars and the people, the golden boot race is so hot because everybody we expect to come and score goals have come and are scoring goals. But those little diamond in the rough, if you want to call it that, those appeal to me, and, it's not true to form as we see. We're talking about the rank 1 to 4 in the world now in the semifinal. That is true to form, but they came in with a level of consistency that I admired. So even though they lost in the quarterfinal, that's the team for me so far. And Ashraf Hakimi is the player I wanted to pick out again for the reasons I just outlined. His contribution to creating the most chances of this tournament as a defender.
Coach Andrew?
Yeah, that's a very good pick, Richie. Real good pick, And the truth be told is that we could pick any number of players from any one of the 8 teams, and we would come up with a really good one. Yeah. For me, though, I think I want to zone in on Jude Bellingham from England. I think he's playing the World Cup like a man with something to prove, and from my time playing football as a youth, nowhere near them levels, but I was always one of those persons who believed in outworking the opponent. And one thing I admire about Jude is his work ethic. Both sides of the ball and even the 2 transition phases of the game, he's always present. And you can see the few moments when him actually pause to catch a breath and reboot the engine and go again. But his timing, his work ethic, his reading of the game, immense. And clearly playing midfield and scoring 6 goals in the World Cup is no mean feat. Just 2 goals behind the leading goal scorers who are strikers by trade says a lot about him. And then if you look at the match-winning defensive actions that he has had in the tournament so far, I think he must be in the queue for the MVP of the tournament. But just in terms of the quarterfinals, there's a player that I want to give what I call a credible mention, and is the substitute for England coming on at left back, Jed Spence. I think the impact that he made on the game coming off the bench, is very Arteta-esque, where, him come on as a finisher and him actually finish the job for England with some really good tackles, some very strong offensive actions. Had a penalty call that was overturned by VAR. And I think his contribution to the winning goal cannot be undercounted as well.
2 awesome picks that my brother. Honestly, I literally call our dear beloved Jermaine Spence after the game last night and ask him, say, that Spence have to be related to this Spence, because that Spence come on with some of this Spence type attitude towards the game and ability towards the game. Yeah, we noticed that. It was really his contribution cannot be unnoted, for real. You know, yeah. And we learned too. So Jude have yard blood in him. We just learned that.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So
Kingston 13.
yeah. So
Yes, and I tell you, it was beautiful to, the crowd singing "Hey Jude" to him,
yeah.
and how he just accepted that with so much humility. I mean, oh my gosh, I'm looking forward to seeing more from him during this World Cup. We have a comment here. It says, "Just gutted that Italy is not playing, and it's been the worst World Cup for me." Wow. Well, hopefully your team will make it to the next cup.
Well, I see they made an appointment for a new technical director recently.
Okay.
Former national player. Oh gosh, the name's kind of escaping me at the moment. But he's one of those players that I admired during his time as a player. And everybody who's close to football would be in a position to accept and recognize and appreciate that Italian football has been on the downward spiral for a while now, certainly in terms of their talent identification and development, how they have been bringing through talent. And so with this appointment, we expect that if he's supported, there will be change on the horizon. And with the pedigree that Italians have as a football nation, that they will, bounce back and possibly be a contender for the next World Cup.
Indeed.
Any disappointments?
For me, the disappointments are more, and I would think I speak for a lot of people in this regard. It's more off the pitch or outside of the sphere of the 11 versus 11, than it is with the game has been, with the expansion of the World Cup. A lot of people, myself included, were a little skeptical of the quality of football we were going to see on display. But everybody accounted for themselves well. I think South Africa might have been a little bit disappointed in the first game, but we can understand that given them a play in Mexico City, but they came into the one after that. Everybody, even Curacao, and not to mention our Cape Verdeans, so the quality of football for me held up. It's the outside the sphere of the 11v11, even things that happen on the field that you can look at and say, why is this happening at the World Cup?
Yes.
And all the other noise around it. Those are the disappointments. But I guess, if we just deal with progress and not looking for perfection, we can accept that, we are still seeing a nice spectacle in front of our eyes. But those are the disappointments to me, nothing to do with the game as it's being played on the field, from my perspective.
Coach Andrew?
Yeah, well, I think the biggest disappointment for me is the way the Egyptian technical staff failed to manage the 2-goal lead that they had against Argentina. I know some of the things Richie skirting around has to do with how that game played out itself as well. And yes, even the Switzerland game, and the truth is there's no unbiased person in the world who can honestly state that Argentina is not being preferred in the World Cup, treated preferably. When I watched the Switzerland game yesterday, it boggles my mind. How is it that Paredes and the number 7, what name again? All them DePaul, all them guys don't get yellow cards in the game. I mean, like literally no Argentine player got a yellow card, and the type of tackle them what they make in the game, every other team make those same tackles and get yellow card. Yes. And that is something that it worries people. But as someone who grew up in Port Antonio and as a country youth, playing football, you grew up, learning that you just have to be better than the rest. And you have to be prepared to fight the rest in a for them backyard and for them terms and beat them up. And I thought Egypt going 2-0 up, I think the coach made some very poor decisions, tactically and even emotionally. I think they lost the plot and that's played into the favoritism or preferential treatment that Argentina are getting in the World Cup. That being said, I think you have to credit Argentina for doing the business because no matter how preferred you are being treated, you still have to go there go get it done. You know,
Yes.
so the disappointment for me is that in particular, that moment. And I just want to expand a little on the emotional aspect because I think a lot of coaches, particularly here in Jamaica, I can speak to, I don't think we have a strong enough appreciation for the emotional side of the game. You know, everybody talk about football being a very passionate sport and one that evokes all kinds of emotions. But in the same breath, we somehow think that the players don't go through those emotions in preparation and during fight, you know, during the game. And so I think if when you look at the World Cup, the teams that are in the semifinals now, in my opinion, at the very least, are the teams that have actually managed the emotional moments, the heated emotional moments at the games better. Because make no mistakes about it, you know. Misguided emotions affect performance, you know, and it also affects opponent's performance.
Yes, yes. You know, we spoke about emotional intelligence in one of the earlier episodes, and I'd like us to delve a little deeper in the next episode because I think it's very important. And I would like to now ask you who will make it to the final. And I'll start with you, Coach Andrew.
um, I don't think I have the powers of Nostradamus, but in terms of preference, still, I am going with the England-Spain finals.
Yeah, I am also bringing my 4 Gunas from the England team. So Bree, you'll be happy with that, you know,
Yes.
as an England supporter and a Guna. But I am going with France, England. I am and I can appreciate the fact that Spain defensively have been solid. You know, take what 1 goal they conceded so far the whole tournament, right? Only
Yes,
just in
that's right.
that you're right. But listen, if Spain were to beat France, we can just give them the World Cup and done. Yeah, yeah.
So I'll ask you now. You know, you've been saying France throughout these programs we've been doing, Emperor. Who will raise the cup in your opinion? Who are you predicting?
You know, I'm still saying France, you know,
Okay.
and the reason I'm still saying France is because I genuinely believe that they have the deepest squad in terms of quality in depth. You know, and much like Thomas Tuchel, Didier Deschamps is doing the right things in the right moments with that team as well, and they're not managing anything in terms of you know, fitness. Saliba is the only one I heard, you know, a little bit of questions around his fitness at times, and he's not playing to me like, you know, he has a fitness issue. Maybe because they're so dominant, you know, he's not put under pressure that much, but they're not flirting with suspensions, you know, they're not flirting with injuries. They have such a deep squad and a coach who's very adaptable and you know, is quality shining through. So, you know, to Andrew's point earlier about the emotions getting the better of the, you know, as great coaches as they are, but you know, not as experienced as, you know, a Deschamps or a Tuchel, and it's shining through, you know. So I just don't see them throwing it away this time. But if Spain rise up and take it from them, then Spain is very well deserving of lifting the cup. But I'm still saying France for those reasons.
Okay.
That's the juggernaut, you know. They are the
Yeah.
juggernauts of the World Cup. You
Yeah.
know? And for those persons who may be wondering why I did not choose Argentina over England, I just think that the age of Argentina will catch up with them. You know, And I also just think that there's a hunger about this English team, particularly Jude Bellingham, which I mentioned before, which I just think that those things are going to play into their favor. But it's going to be a very heated contest, and I don't think it's going to be a contest that is going to be comfortable for viewers, much less the players on the pitch.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm praying, you know, I've been thinking about this a lot, this World Cup. You know, I will be 63 on Friday. The last time England won the World Cup, I was 3 years old. I think it's about time that we win this cup. I'm like 60 years. Come on, you know it. It's
coming
time.
home. It's coming home.
it's time. It's like every 4 years, getting my heart broken. I'm like, you know, this would be such a wonderful birthday present. So I'm hoping that we will find. I'm like, and I said it to Richie on our first episode when Sir Bobby Moore lifted that cup, did he think it would have been another 60 years before England would have had another one? So I am very, very, very hopeful. Now I have to speak about the Colombian player, and I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly, Hamilton Campos. You know, I read about him not returning to Colombia. He's actually afraid to go home. He's been receiving death threats. I would like us to talk about the overzealous fans and how their fandom affects the beautiful game. If I was a player, I'd be afraid to go out there and take a penalty kick. You know, it's like you should be look, not every penalty kick will go through, and that's just the way it is. I don't care how great you are. And for players having to be in fear of their lives because of something like that, I think it's so unfair to the players. I'd like you both to address that.
You want to go first, Elder?
All right, no worries. So, yes, these things are what we 100% don't want around the game. You know, we don't want that at all. These players work their entire lives sacrificing so much to give us the joy that they do give us. And obviously, at times, they also cause us serious heartaches. That said, though, it is extremely unfortunate, and I think it has to do a bit with the culture of the country, you know, where there is a lot of rebel history, guerrilla history, crime, organized crime history, and so it is very difficult to state that this is coming from regular fandom. You know, I don't think it is. There is no real evidence on which to speak, but normally these things are tied to people making bets and bets not coming through, people having questionable connections that affect, that have consequences when things don't go the way they expected or they vouch for them to go. And so it is unfortunate, you know, and we really hope that some measures can be put in place to protect the player, you know, and give him some peace. And one has to also recall that it was just about a year and a half ago where the father of Luis Diaz was kidnapped in Colombia, you know. So again, it just speaks to the history. You don't know, you know, people probably literally made a big bet on it and lost all of them things, and then just feel like this is the only way to deal with it. So we just really and truly hope that there's some way that lawmakers and law enforcement can find a way to protect the player and give him some peace so that he can continue to bring joy to those to those of us who love the beautiful game.
Yes. Emperor?
Yeah, I want to lean in a little bit more on that, Kola, because, you know, and again, Bree, you know, just want to express gratitude for this platform to be able to speak to issues like these, because for me, this is not a football issue. as we talk about all these injustices that the players are facing, it's a microcosm of the world that we live in, society and a whole. It's almost like when these abuse are meted out to players, mostly players of color. Um, it's just how society operates, and the football is just a piece of that. I mean, people, and you make a great point about the cultural history of the particular nation that we're talking about, in this case, Colombia, right? And it has happened to Andres Escobar the last time the World Cup was held in these United States, right? And to Andrew's point, I mean, the other Escobar that we're all familiar with, that was his little thing where he, have his big games at his estate and flying players from all over the world. And I understand, I learned later that Escobar was always invited there. The other Escobar, no relation to Andres, no related to Pablo. But Andres always refused because of his whole Cristo. So that thing was not in isolation, as I'm later learning. It wasn't in isolation, and this might not be in isolation either, to Andrew's point, because there might be a lot riding on this, and because of the cultural history of these folks, they feel that they have the ability to just dispose of who they want to dispose of whenever they want to. But I feel it's a bigger societal issue, and while we are depending on law enforcement to do their jobs, but I want to call on our brothers and sisters, and take responsibility for ourselves and do what we be of ourselves, right? I mean, our granny grew us up in our way where she always tell us that, a man is a man, but I feel sports people in general, right, are seen as a tier below, say, the doctors and the engineers and the lawyers, right? I mean, we are taught to look up to those professions as the standard bearers of professionalism, right? Sports people, football players, specifically, we're talking about now, is a profession as well, and these are professional people. But if we strip away the profession and just deal with our brothers and sisters from a space as a man is just a man, right? So Bevan Palmer sitting on, bank corner is still seen as a man, as maybe a Michael Leachin who is flying over into his abode out in Dolphin. But we're not brought up that way, right? Society teaches us that, there are strata within the society, and the person dressed in a nice suit and sat at a desk, right, is a more powerful and person to be respected than the boys and girls, or the young men and young women running on the field and kicking a ball, or bowling a ball and batting a ball, right? So that thought process that you are less than, or I am more than, it's fun for me to just say anything to you or about you without thought, because that's how society socializes us. So it's deeper than just a sporting issue for me, and I feel like we have to do better as human beings among ourselves to deal with each other with more equity, on a more equitable level than just the one-time abuse which we hurl at each other all the time.
Yeah. I definitely agree with both of you, and I'm just hoping, because as we go deeper into this World Cup, it's like they're players, and they bring so much joy, as you mentioned, Andrew, and I think it's so unfair to the players. But thank you so much for your comments. My next question is, does the future of the game look bright for the players from the Caribbean?
Well, I saw recently that there might be as much as 64 teams in the next World Cup.
Really?
Yeah, that news broke today. I saw it on the BBC, Sky Sports.
Because
do you guys like that number? Don't you think that's a little much? I mean, what do you think?
I genuinely think it's a bit much, because this 48 is the first time it's been done, and I thought it was a bit much.
Yes.
But again, I can see the wheels spinning on this, because we're coming into the centenary celebration of the World Cup now, right? Because it's 100 years on since the first World Cup in 1930. And then, the mighty money play a large role in everything that's going on. This is going to be hosted now in 3 countries already, right? Spain, Portugal, and Morocco. And I also understand that some games are going to play, opening games are going to be played in Uruguay, which where the first World Cup was being held. And if memory serves, I thought they were also talking about, correct me if I'm wrong, Kola, that there will be games hosted in Brazil and Argentina as well.
No, Argentina and Paraguay.
Okay. So, this is going to be really a global event. How they are going to manage 64 teams, I have no idea. I mean, I just
It
saw
sounds
today.
like it'll be like what, like 2 months? I mean, oh my gosh.
Technically, you don't need a lot much more time than what was already used for this 48 World Cup, because when you're going to move from 64 to 32 to 16 to 8 is the same basis basically. Yeah. So instead of having third place teams qualify, now you just have top two,
right?
So the logistics of it in terms of time, I don't think it's going to be much more. It's just more in terms of the management of people, housing, and security, and all of those other little things.
Wow.
But to answer your question directly about what this,
the 64 team World Cup thing.
I think we have a log.
Hello?
Yeah,
man. May I say the 64 team World Cup is it have a lot much more than meets the eye about it in a real way. Because even the 48 team World Cup, it was a money business on one hand, but also a political campaign strategy on the other hand. And 64 teams going to the next World Cup is almost a guarantee to make sure, say, the political directorate are returned on block. Because that kind of benefit promised with the kind of money that comes into the teams that qualifies is almost a guarantee. Nobody now go vote against that so easily. And it take a whole heap of steel to vote against that. The other part of it is the geopolitics aspect of it. So with the World Cup as it is now, without the expansion, the 2038 World Cup will be assuming that there are no changes to the rules of FIFA. So the rules of FIFA basically state that no confederation should host the tournament until 2 stagings have passed. So now we are in 26 and CONCACAF is hosting. 2030, pretty much the whole globe are hosts. 2034, it's going to be in, is it Saudi Arabia, I think? One of them Middle Eastern
Saudi Arabia
countries, which is Asia, right? So when the 2038 cycle come around, technically the only eligible confed now becomes CONCACAF. You understand what I'm saying? Because Morocco is Africa, ruling out Africa. South America get ruled out with Paraguay and Argentina. And Asia get ruled out. Europe get ruled out. So you have to come back to CONCACAF. Now, what role does the USA have to play in all of that? You know, what role does Canada and Mexico have to play in all of that? Excuse me. I just think that there are some serious chess moves being made that we are probably not even capable of recognizing at this moment.
Yeah. I'm still taking it all in, and it's like, this 48, I tell you, I work nights, and there was so many games, and it's like trying to watch as many as I could, but it's like it was near impossible, working and trying to watch everything. And I'm trying to think about all these extra games. Personally, I preferred it the way it was before, but the 48 was actually not as bad as I thought it would have been. I actually enjoyed it.
Yeah.
But I don't know how I feel about 64.
Yeah. I mean,
Honestly.
we're always skeptical of change, but to answer your question directly, Bree, I feel that yes, the future does look bright for Caribbean players, but it's a matter of having to go and take the opportunity, because what this will open up now is more eyes on the region. I've seen already the little kid more from Mexico. There's already a battle going on between Arsenal and Liverpool for this 18-year-old kid. So what that does is it shines more light on what's happening in this region. I mean,
Yes.
after the '94 World Cup, we see what happened with the MLS, right? The MLS grew and expanded and become a real thing, and it's still going strong today. So that might be a route for most of these Caribbean players to take now, instead of just Europe or bust. The Mexican league is a very competitive league, has always been.
Yes.
So yeah, to your point, I mean, there are avenues opening up for Caribbean players now with this event. So, but it's a matter of taking those opportunities, and taking those opportunities includes a lot that might be simple to us, but for most people involved may not be so simple, right? Coach Andrew talked earlier about the psychological aspect of things and the emotions that go into it, and the players that goes through these emotions too, right? When you think of what it takes to move a player from anywhere in a local club setup into a professional club setup, right? There are protocols, there are steps that most of the people who are running these clubs, well, and I'm speaking from a Jamaican perspective because I don't know much about the Caribbean, the rest of the Caribbean, but I would imagine it's not too dissimilar, right? There's a lot that's involved in getting there. And if somebody doesn't come to you and spot that player because that player is so exceptional, you might not necessarily know the channels and the possibilities that exist to move that player through your local club into a more professional setup. So, the opportunities will be there, but will they be taken?
And Angie, you have an
Opportunities will
academy. I mean,
100% be taken.
yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, opportunities will 100% be taken up. And FIFA is ensuring that some of the stuff you talk about, Richie, are significantly reduced. So there's a lot of training, capacity building that is taking place via FIFA channels. And of course, as you become more exposed and more knowledgeable, you recognize that there are also other channels through which these things can be done and obtained in terms of capacity building. So even with Genesis, one of the things that we're aiming to do 100% for 2027 and beyond is to get ourselves registered on the FIFA Connect. So that means the players that we are developing now, when they move on, there is some benefit to reflow to us, because we have one player who would have come through our ranks already who's playing professional football, and there's a second one who, what I saw on his Instagram a couple of weeks ago, that he should be on trials this week here, all right, for MLS. Now, assuming that he's successful, reality is that Genesis has nothing to benefit based on how we are currently structured. Now, if when we do change that structure, right, and the current players that we have in our stables make that same step, then by natural order, based on FIFA regulations, something will have to come back to us for, I think, is the first 2 or 3 transfers that player makes. So that's one side of the equation. The other side of the equation is that training, both at the technical and administrative level, are on the rise and on the increase, largely because of FIFA. And a lot of this is being made mandatory. So it's not just you want to do a course and you go do it. No, it is mandatory. You have to have certain basic requirements to meet certain requirements to get funding, to get qualification to the X projects, blah, blah, blah. So those are things that will ensure benefit to the Caribbean. And let's make no mistake about it. I saw a newspaper article yesterday, I think it was, that says Jamaica is still the only country that has not signed, speaking of the government, the hosting rights agreement for the 2031 Women's World Cup. Now, if you are following, you'll know that that World Cup will be jointly hosted by the USA, Mexico, Costa Rica, and Jamaica. All right? And Jamaica hosting a World Cup, a senior World Cup, is a big deal for Jamaica.
Yes.
A big deal for the Caribbean. And so it simply means that we are going to be under the microscope of the world for the next 5 years, you know, in every way conceivable, in terms of how we organize, how we build our infrastructure, how we coach, what talent we are developing, you name it. Everything is going to be scrutinized over the next 5 years. And so the Caribbean will benefit from those things.
I mean, that's something to look forward to, definitely. Now let's talk about the African teams. They really stood out in this World Cup. What can we expect or look forward to in the next World Cup as far as the African teams?
Well, for me, what I would like, because if we go back to African teams' participation in the World Cup, right, we've seen steady progress being made.
Yes.
Right, we've seen the teams being competitive. Right, we have 10 teams from Africa for the first time in a World Cup tournament. Right, and 9 of those teams progressed to the knockout stages. You know, Coach Andrew alluded to it earlier in terms of the maturity, and these things come with experience, right? Of the not only the coaches but the players, because while we depend on the coaches to lead, players themselves are the 11 players who are on the field at any given time. So, I mean, you know, I always like to make the point that we learn football a different way to probably how most kids learn football, because we learn from one of the best, and we learn football from, you know, all 5 pillars of the sport when we were taught the game. So we were quote unquote masters of the game at 15, 16 years old. Right. And we were literally playing against men at 15, 16 years old. And that's how we became national champions at 16 years old, because we were playing against grown men, you know, before we went back to play with boys for a national title. So I'm saying that to say it over the period, we could see Morocco getting the first point. When was that? Back in 1990, right? Colum, I think we got the first point. The first African team to get a point was Morocco back in 1990, I believe. Right. They were the first team to progress to the knockout stage, first team to win a match, right? Become the first team to make it to the semifinal of the last World Cup. So we've seen that progress with not just that one team, but other teams stepping up and, you know, winning historical games, right? Almost having shock results. But the maturity of the players and the coaches is what I would hope to see, where a Senegal leading a Belgium 2-0 with 15 minutes to go, Egypt leading an Argentina 2-0 with 13 minutes to go. Regardless of the other things that happen that, you know, I'm trying my best not to speak of, you know, these teams are experienced enough now and mature enough in terms of player and personnel, you know, coaching personnel, to help them see out those games. So it's not just a foregone conclusion that something can happen. You know, a decision can be made that just change the whole trajectory and take it away from us. You know, when I saw Luis Suarez's face pop up on the screen, you know, in the game, I was like, yeah, Asamoah Gyan and Ghana. You know, that's the feeling that comes back to me. But again, I look forward to see that level of growth and maturity among the entire football populace, from players to coaches and administrators, that we are standing up and being spoken of and being looked at and playing like those established nations, like the 4 that are left right now.
Yes. Coach Andrew?
Yes, so all our emperors say we endorse all of that. Taking it a step further, though, I think Africa and Africans should be disappointed in the performance of the African teams at the World Cup, particularly the teams that over the last 2 or 3 years, through the Africa Cup of Nations, African qualification and friendly internationals, the expectations were higher. We're talking particular about the Ivory Coast, Senegal, Morocco, those three in particular. And then we could also add Egypt into that mix. I think when the dust settles, I think all of those teams, on reflection, will recognize that they would have missed opportunities to do better than they have done. That being said, I think Africa as a continent is in the process of a revolution, a political revolution, an economic revolution. And that revolution by necessity will that where the teams will by necessity need to be coached by Africans. Yeah, the days when Africa must turn to Europe for knowledge and expertise are gone and should remain gone. The exportation of African talents to Europe must start experiencing a repatriation. Mario Balotelli spoke about it some years ago. And
Yes.
when you look at the composition of all of the European teams, France, Spain, Belgium, Switzerland, England, there's probably just one or two, Croatia, Uzbekistan, to name two, that I could not recognize any African-born players or players of African descent. Now, the African federations owe it to the people of African descent to put their houses in order to ensure that the best talents being developed in Europe are happy to come back home and play for Ghana, Nigeria, and Ivory Coast, and Togo, and Burkina Faso, and all of Africa. Because that is when Africa's true power is going to come shining through. And I think it's happening. It's just a matter of time that it will come to full fruition.
I want to jump in just a little bit, if I might, sis.
Sure.
Andrew, we talk about this on a few occasions when we met before, Bree, where I'm talking about engaging these players and let them feel a part of your country and the need, right? And I'm saying this because I was listening to Patrick Vieira on one of the, he was analyst on one of the France-Morocco game, and they were talking about Ayoud Bouhaddi, right? He was born in France, captained the French under-21 team, and was expected to play for France up until weeks before the World Cup. And Vieira was like, no, he wasn't expecting to play for France. He always wanted to play for Morocco, right? Because they've been engaging him. And the guy asked Vieira, was like, yeah, but you were born in Senegal and you played for France. I was like, yeah, but nobody from Senegal engaged me, right? I was growing up in France and I was expected to play for France. If Senegal engaged me, who knows, my international career might have been different. But nobody engaged me from Senegal and asked me to play for Senegal, right? And I've said this all the time, especially with us Jamaicans now, with people like Mason Greenwood and the majority of Jude Bellingham, right? I'm saying maybe Job can come play, right? But the point I'm making is that engage these people, knowing that they exist, track their process, engage them early, let them feel a part.
Yes.
Include them in what's going on so they don't feel like now you're grabbing at them. There's no connection. Make the connection
Yes.
and engage them. But I totally agree with you, Andrew, and I totally agree with Mario Balotelli when he said it. And I still think it's going to be a case where everything coming out of Africa will serve Africans and Mama Africa more than it is currently serving the rest of the world. I genuinely see that day coming.
Thank you for those comments. Giving me a lot to think about. And, I think the future looks bright, but, we have to do our part for sure. Now, are the remaining 4 teams, are they feeling a high level of anxiety in anticipation of their upcoming games? I mean, I know there has to be a lot of nerves taking place right now. What's your take on that? I'll start with you, Coach Andrew.
Anxiety and nervousness for sportsmen and women is a natural part of the thing. It's recognition that you are getting ready for fight. The very top professionals in any sport are the ones who learn to manage those emotions, how to manage those nervousness and other negative mental situations. However, I as much as it is natural, I don't think it's a big factor for any of these teams. There are teams that are playing with full professionals, playing at the very highest level. Most players on all of these 4 teams would have played in championship games, whether it be Euros, South American Championships, Champions League, domestic league titles, you name it. So they are proper professionals, and I think they are well equipped. Also, these teams are not in this situation by chance, by any measure. These teams are so meticulous and detail-oriented that things such as sleep and rest, hydration, food, nutrition, anything at all that you can conceive that could have an impact on performance, I guarantee you it is covered. It is captured, and there's a staff member employed solely to deal with that. So they're just focusing on their preparation as a team, as individuals, as small groups within the team, and just essentially itching. If you go back to the days of Spartacus and Greek and the Roman Empire and all of those things, man, basically I sharpen them sword now. I get ready. Say it is coming, and we just go out there, go do what we have to do by all means necessary.
Yeah, I mean, not much to add to that, because that is 100% so. I mean, you have a Dr. Scott Hamilton, in all of those teams, and a team of Dr. Scott Hamilton in all of those teams to make sure everybody's on an even keel, and as Coach Andrew said, it's just a natural part of the human process to get a little nervy when you're anticipating something. That's not abnormal, and these, like Coach said, very well prepared and organized, meticulous, from adapting to the climate, the traveling, everything measured. We saw where Norway even driving them, flying or sailing them own fish and cheese,
Yes.
So nothing is to chance in these situations, but as human beings, there's naturally going to be a little bit of nerves, but nothing to say nerves take the better of the player throughout the course of the game. Once that whistle blow and every man get them first touch, we're ready for show people what we can do.
Yeah, I tell you, I'm looking forward to meeting with you again this week, Richie, for us to discuss the upcoming final. And then after the World Cup, Coach Andrew will join us. So they can give you a recap of the game. I've really enjoyed this conversation tonight, and I'm so thankful for both of you agreeing to do this with me. I'd like to ask you both, do you have any closing thoughts?
Yes, sis, I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak on your platform to your beautiful viewers. I always take the opportunity to move it beyond football, especially as we've talked about earlier, a young soldier, no longer with us in the physical sense, giving us all the beauty and joy that he has over his short 25 years. And we're talking about another soldier who has given us such beautiful joy when we watch the Colombia versus Portugal game, for example, and marvel at, the level of sportsmanship and show, the athleticism, the skill.
Yes.
And now to think that there's a young man who's afraid to go home, having done all that to the world. When we think of the brothers in Germany and Holland, and our brothers in England, at the last Euros or the Euros before 2 Euros, going back, I want to just reflect on our individual role in the world we want to live in, and accept that we can be the change that we want to see, that everything happens because it's been allowed to happen and because somebody decided to do it. And we don't need government and law enforcement or anybody else to tell us how to behave ourselves wisely. Because, I know, when we were growing up, Andrew Ritchie and Jeff can be anywhere with anybody. But when we see wrongdoing go on, we know that if somebody said like by the boy was there, we have a date with Mama Dara and the big belt. And, I'm not advocating beating people, Pitney. You know what I'm saying?
That was life.
When you expect discipline for misbehaving, you don't misbehave. It's right? True. When you're being brought up properly, you do the right thing. Which is why we talk about Bevin Palmer upon the bank and Michael Leach, just 2 man. Just 2 man. And if I'm looking at both of them or see both of them, none of them not going to get more time out of me than the other. More emotions out of me than the other. More love out of me than the other. Because they're 2 brothers. And I see them as 2 brothers. And I look in your eye as 2 brothers. That's it. So I would reflect and ask everybody listening or who will listen and watch later on to just reflect on our contribution into this space. And is it a positive contribution? If not, can we try to make it more positive? And if it is positive, let's keep making it positive.
Thank you for that, Emperor. Coach Andrew?
Yeah, we're going to keep it real short. Life is evolving. Football is evolving. And we have to keep evolving to keep pace and to stay relevant. The future for Caribbean football and Jamaican football in particular is extremely exciting. I can't tell you how excited I am literally about wanting to be here and present for 2031 to just be a part of that spectacle when it comes.
Yes.
And quite frankly, we here at Genesis Football Academy, we have a very selfish agenda where that is concerned. We want to make sure that when the roster is announced, there is a player who started at Genesis in that roster, and that's our mission. We have 5 years to get it together. I would probably say less than 5 years, probably 3 years. So we have our work cut out for us. I'm going to be doing. In closing, we want to say that we don't want Argentina to win the World Cup because we want the Arsenal man to be a World Cup champion.
Well said. Well said. Well said. Well, I tell you, I'm looking forward to
anybody else win it than Argentina. We have a world champion.
We will have a world champion. Indeed.
I appreciate those closing thoughts, and I'm looking forward to our next meeting. And thank you so much. I really enjoyed this conversation. I'd like to wish everyone a blessed week. And if you watch the replay, you have a question or comment, please feel free to post them. And if you have any questions about what you can do to offer any assistance to Coach Andrew with his academy, please do so. Thank you so much, and I look forward to the next one, guys. Take care.
Thank you, Brie. Bless up, Ella.